How's it going, everybody? Trying something different. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder. We are streaming live on StreamYard, trying to see how this all works. I know a lot of times when I record, well, most of the time when I record, it's pre-recorded. But I want to try to do this, see how it goes, and then, we'll continue to do it and maybe do some podcast episodes with guests, with my friend Damatassa, who I have on, with Ben, who I haven't had on in a while. But I have a little ticker on the bottom that has the social media pages that you could follow myself, when I post shorts and things like that, that get you to go and watch the podcast and listen to them. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. A couple things I wanted to touch upon today. Some Yankee stuff. We got the WBC coming up very soon, which I'm looking forward to that. See if Team USA can continue the momentum that the Olympics left off with how the USA did, especially with the hockey teams. And I actually did go to the Islanders game yesterday as they defeated the Panthers. Wild finish to that game. It looked like I was going to be 0-3 going to Islanders games this year, but that did not happen. They were down 2-0 early in the first period. They ended up tying the game. It was a back and forth game. Islanders had the lead late, and then the Panthers, they took their goalie out and they scored a 6-on-5. And then Anders Lee, with less than a minute left, great play by him, was able to score the go-ahead goal, and the Islanders end up winning late. So it was a very exciting game. Probably the best hockey game I've been to, honestly. And obviously, you guys know me. I'm more of a baseball, football oriented guy. But hockey is very exciting. It's a very exciting sport, very fast paced, and it's safe to say that Islanders fans really love Matthew Schaefer and how he's been doing his rookie season. And the Islanders, look, they were a team that not too long ago they made it to the conference finals, and unfortunately, the Lightning knocked them off a couple times, and then of course, that continued with the Rangers and the Lightning ending their season. So, the Islanders are looking to get back to that point and finally get back to, Stanley Cup. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but, they got a rookie phenom that, maybe if not this year, maybe in a few years or so, they can get themselves back to where they were a couple years ago and get back to a Stanley Cup and maybe win a championship, which is something they haven't done in a very long time. So, but yeah, it was a great night. Um, UBS Arena does have a few things they need to work out, particularly with the parking situation. There's some things that they need to clean up there because it takes forever to get out of there. And you got to take, depending on where you park, you either going to walk the whole way to the arena or you take the shuttles. But that's a separate topic for another day. But yeah, so that was yesterday. But I did want to talk about some Yankee stuff, some Giancarlo Stanton stuff, as well as CC Sabathia. I wanted to talk about that because that's the title of this episode. And we'll first touch upon Stanton. So Giancarlo Stanton's been making headlines because of something he said regarding his tennis elbows injuries, that he struggles opening up, a water bottle or a bag of chips. And of course, that has everybody up in arms, like, oh, here we go again with Stanton and his injury. He's not going to be healthy this year. He should retire, all these different things. And this is something that we already knew going into the season, that he's dealing with these injuries. He could play through it. What's the big deal? But it's because of the quote that, oh, he can't open a bag of chips, he can't open a water bottle. Oh man, he's he's going to be a deficit to the Yankees this year. I mean, again, it's one of those things that people are looking to, get clicks and get these reactions. This is stuff that we already know. Stanton dealt with this injury going back to when he had that incredible postseason that helped the Yankees get to the World Series a couple years ago. And then he dealt with it last year, had a great season in the games that he played. It's no different. Now, if you wanna ask, like, why didn't he get something done with about it? Why didn't he get a surgery the surgery to, fix this? Well, that's a separate conversation, but if it's something that he could play through, I really don't think there's anything to go crazy about. And the other thing too is everybody when it comes to his availability and things like that, um, if he's able to play through it, if he can manage the pain, then all right, then there's nothing that we could do about it, you know? Um, I know when talking about, you have these younger players, like Dominguez and like Spencer Jones that are looking for an opportunity. That's where I get that's where you could be frustrated. But if you're talking if you're going nuts over the fact that, "Oh, he's hurt again," it's the same injury, and guess what? He's gonna get hurt again. He might get he's gonna tweak something during the year that's gonna keep him out. He's gonna go on the IL, and then that's gonna open up the door for opportunities for Jason Dominguez, for Spencer Jones. That's how I see it. And I talked about this, last week, and I know other people have said this too, that the Yankees don't have to trade Dominguez or Spencer Jones unless you're getting an impactful player. They don't have to do that because you're only going to have Trent Grisham for 1 year and Giancarlo Stanton this year and next year. That's it. Then he's off the books. So that's going to pave the way for these young guys to play every day. Now, unfortunately, they're going to have to wait a little bit longer because, again, Grisham's going to be here for 1 year. Stan's got 2 more years. But soon enough, they are going to get that runway. They're going to get those opportunities. And again, Stan goes on the IL. There's an opportunity right there. And if Grisham struggles this year out of the gate, maybe he doesn't have a long leash. Maybe the Yankees say, you know what, bring up the young guys. Let's see what they got. Spencer Jones has shown tremendous power so far in this spring, although the strikeouts are still a problem. And, you want to see that go down. And Dominguez has had a pretty good spring so far. And he's got to get every opportunity to improve himself out in the outfield. Because the Yankees do have a logjam at DH. I mean, if you listen to Mike Francesa's podcast, that's all he talks about is how the Yankees just have DHs. That's it. So, got to have some guys that are able to play the field. But yeah, Dominguez needs every opportunity to improve out there. And Spencer Jones rather. We know he's a great fielder. So odds are, next season, if there is a season, barring the lockout, next season, if he has that opportunity, he could be the everyday center fielder. And then, with Stanton after 2027, his contract's off the books, and Dominguez has an opportunity. Obviously, the Yankees brought back Bellinger, and he's going to be playing the outfield. Whether it's, mostly left field, but he could play some center, he could play some right. Could also play first base if he has to. And there'll be times where Judge needs to DH, and as Judge gets older here, he's going to be DHing more, or could be playing first base at some point. But we know he's definitely going to DH, so that's going to open up the door for these guys to play the field. So there are opportunities there. I know it's just you want to see these guys play now and not wait because Dominguez. Last year looked like that was going to be his opportunity, but, with how Grisham played and how he struggled in the field and Stan coming back, that took away opportunities from Dominguez. And he was really a non-player for a while. Got one postseason at bat, It was, in the ninth inning of the game that ended the Yankee season, game 4 of the division series last year, and he had a double. So, I am disappointed about that. And I do agree that Dominguez was hyped up, you know, when he first came up, the nickname, the Martian, we were expecting big things and, dealt with injuries. And then, the Yankees got Soto and, you also had Verdugo. Um, and the Yankees tried to give Dominguez an opportunity to, take the job away from Verdugo, but he couldn't play the field. And that's why Verdugo was playing in the playoffs. And then last year, Grisham had this big year. You had Bellinger, you had Judge, and you couldn't DH him because of Stanton coming back and lost opportunities there. So it's been tough for Dominguez, but still very young. I hope he does get his opportunity with the Yankees. Spencer Jones, a couple years older, around the age that Judge came up. You want to see this guy come up and show what he could do. And again, he's got tremendous power. If he could, like I said, cut down on the strikeouts, he's a good fielder. Could be a very good player for the Yankees coming up. So we'll see. But yeah, I just feel like all the Stanton stuff is blown way out of proportion. And the other thing too is, you know, I like where the Yankees are at in terms of their depth. Like you go back to a couple years ago with the injuries they dealt with. Who were they bringing up? They were bringing up Jake Bowers and Billy McKinney and Willie Calhoun. That's not the same case here. Like if you got guys that go down, you're going to have professional hitters. You're going to have, some big prospects. Like, if an outfielder goes down, you could see Spencer Jones. You could see Dominguez. If an infielder goes down, like Volpe's going down, like Jose Caballero was pretty good for them. Pretty good acquisition at the deadline. You got Ahmed Rosario as well that could also play short too. They want to try to make McMahon the emergency shortstop. Give him some reps out there. See what he could do. Because the Yankees, we'll see how they completely fill out the roster when we get close to opening day, how the 26-man roster looks. Because it could be some guys fighting for that final spot. I'm curious to see what happens with Randall Grichuk. It seems like he could be making the roster because the Yankees need another right-handed outfielder or right-handed bat that could play the outfield. Because, you got Bellinger, you got Grisham, and Stan's not really going to be playing the outfield. Judge, obviously, being right-handed. And Dominguez and Spencer Jones. Like, Dominguez, he can't hit from the right side. So, and his struggles in the field. And then Spencer Jones is left-handed as well. So they really wanted that right-handed bat. They tried that with Austin Slater last year at the deadline, and he didn't really pan out. He also got hurt. And Grichuk's also a Yankee killer. So bringing him in, didn't have a great year last year, but a couple years ago had a decent year. So I like the Yankees' depth going into the season. I would have liked to have seen them add a right-handed catcher, because they got 3 guys that can catch that are all left-handed. Escara, Wells, and Ben Rice. But Ben Rice is going to be primarily playing first base. But I like where the depth is at, and I think they have a lot of depth at pitching, with the starting pitching at least. We'll see what happens with the bullpen, but the starting pitching, they got a lot of depth going into the season. So, and the team gotten off to a good start in the spring, but you got to take it with a grain of salt because it is spring training. So, but I'm expecting the Yankees to have a good year. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and again, the title of the episode is CC Sabathia. He will be inducted into Monument Park. His number 52 is going to be retired, and that's kind of sparked a lot of conversations. First off, I kind of had the same reaction as CC because he joined the Michael Kay show to talk about it, and he was surprised. He didn't expect this to happen. The Yankees called him, and his ceremony is going to take place on September 26th in the Bronx, which I'm trying to attend that. But yeah, I was definitely a little surprised by that. And look, I think CC does deserve that honor because, first ballot Hall of Famer, was the Yankees ace for nearly a decade when they signed him, and he helped propel the Yankees, played a huge role in the 2009 championship. Wish they would have won more with him, and, kind of helped, be a mentor to, some of the young guys that came up, the baby bombers, because it was really, I mean, him and Gardner were, the last two guys from the World Series team, as, Judge and all these guys came up, um, and kind of reinvented himself as a pitcher, because he did go through some rough years, after the velocity went down for him. But with the help of Andy Pettitte, he kind of reinvented himself, and had a couple of decent years, especially 2017. The Yankees won what, like 12 straight with him on the mound, up until the ALCS Game 7 against the Astros. He was still reliable, even even after his flame throwing days were over. But those first couple years when he was regarded as one of the best pitchers in baseball, I mean, he was great for the Yankees. He was the Yankees ace for a long time, and everybody goes back to when I mean, the Yankees gave him the bonus anyways, but in that moment, you thought he lost out on a few extra bucks. When he threw at the Rays hitter, and got thrown out of the game. A guy that is always there to defend his teammates. First one out, the dugout. If he's got to be there to defend his teammates. He's somebody you want to have on your side, and was one of my favorite Yankees growing up. And even Joe Girardi, like after CC got taken off the mound in his what was his final game in the championship series against the Astros, Girardi, when he was on MLB Network, got a little choked up because he said that he was the guy that Sabathia was the guy he always wanted to have on the mound when they needed a win. And CC came through, in a lot of big moments. Again, the 2009 season, he was the ALCS MVP. He was a big part, in that championship. And it's kind of crazy that they didn't win more, but it happens. But he was worth it. He was worth every penny. The Yankees bringing him over. He was a great Yankee. Again, I understand, and I kind of do fall into this, that he wasn't always a Yankee, right? He spent all those years in Cleveland, and then he was one of the greatest trade acquisitions. In '08 when the Brewers got him, and they had him pitching like every 3 days on short days rest, because they wanted to make the playoffs, and he came through. So, and I understand there's obviously guys out in Monument Park that, some of them weren't always Yankees, Paul O'Neill, for example. But a lot of those guys were part of dynasties, like CC's Yankees, like obviously played with the core four, but once the core four retired, I mean, the Yankees didn't win after that. But I know there were definitely some people that were a little aggressive with this announcement. I know an article in the New York Post, Yankees retiring CC Sabathia's number shows the sad state of our standard for greatness. And CC had a nice tweet saying, "Sorry you feel that way. See you September 26th." Like, see, that comes off as like CC is just, like not a first ballot Hall of Famer, that he's just like low grade pitcher. Like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You definitely could have worded that differently. Like if you want to say, well, I mean, he wasn't always a Yankee, and they only won one championship, and I know people bring up that he didn't win any Cy Youngs. I get that. But CC's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher. He was with the team for a decade, and he won a lot of games with the Yankees. But I do get it. I do get it. And like I said, I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised that this happened. You know, but hey, I'm happy for him. He deserves it, and it should be a great day. It should be a great ceremony. But I did also want to, bring up the other side to this too, is the outcry for A-Rod not being in Monument Park. Look, it has a lot more to do with, I mean, obviously the PEDs was something that, did take place on the field because, he was using them while he was playing. But it had a lot to do with off the field stuff and you know, he did try to sue the Yankees. There was a lot of during towards the end of A-Rod's playing career, um, there was a lot of bad moments. Now, do I think that A-Rod does deserve his number 13 retired? Now, yeah, I do. It's not going to happen because we've seen players wear it. Joey Gallo, obviously. Jazz Chisholm is wearing it currently and doing the number, doing the number better than, Gallo did. Let's put it like that. But and listen, A-Rod, like CC, wasn't always a Yankee, but you're going to remember A-Rod. Like when you think of A-Rod, you think of the Yankees. You know, um, and won a championship with the Yankees. Obviously, won 2 MVPs while he was with the Yankees. You know, hit his 500th and 600th home run, career home runs with the Yankees. His 3,000th hit was with the Yankees. A lot of iconic moments. It's just, the relationship between the two is not the best. So, because of those past mistakes, that's why his number's not out there. Had none of that stuff happen, be a different story. But because he made those mistakes, he's paying for it by, the Yankees not doing it. And is there a chance that one day it does happen? I don't know. I am one of those people that does believe that he should be like, taking a step away from Monument Park, like the Hall of Fame in general. A-Rod should be there. Barry Bonds should be there. All those guys that, took steroids, I do think that they belong there. I do. But that's just me. So, yeah, I know that's been something that everyone's saying A-Rod should get in. A-Rod should have a plaque out there in Monument Park. Maybe one day it happens, but right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Just doesn't look like that's happening. But looking forward to CC's ceremony. It's going to be it should be a great day, and like I said, it's on September 26th in the Bronx. So looking forward to that. But yeah, some other things. So we'll talk some NFL actually a little bit. So the Texans actually made a trade. They acquired David Montgomery from the Lions. A couple of draft picks, 4th and a 5th round pick, I believe. Montgomery, it seemed like he was on his way out of Detroit. Wanted more of an opportunity. Now with Jahmyr Gibbs last year getting the bulk of the carries and rightfully deserved. Had a great season. Montgomery kind of lost some touches, and the last couple of years it kind of seemed like it was more of a split backfield, but not last year, not this past season. Jahmyr Gibbs took on the bulk of the carries and did very well. And Montgomery wanted more of an opportunity, and the Texans, were a team that really didn't run the football great this past season. The freak foot injury by Joe Mixon. This basically signals the end for Joe Mixon in Houston. They're going to get rid of him, and who knows if he gets another opportunity, after missing a whole year, at that position with that injury. I think a team will give him a chance, but only time will tell. But I think Montgomery can definitely help out that running back room. Woody Marks, a rookie, struggled last season. And they also had Nick Chubb, who really didn't provide that much for them. Nick Chubb, another running back, where unfortunately his best days are behind him. Um, you know, after his horrific knee injury from a couple of years ago. So I do like that move for the Texans. Another thing they got to do is continue to improve that offensive line, and CJ Stroud has got to bounce back because he had a rough end to his season, that's for sure. But the Texans are going to be good next year, and that's an area they definitely improved in by making this trade was trading for David Montgomery. So that was a trade that went down. Also, a couple of franchise tag headlines. The Falcons franchise tagged Kyle Pitts. The Cowboys going to do the same thing with George Pickens. They've done that. Pickens had a great year with the Cowboys alongside CeeDee Lamb. So, we'll see if they're able to reach a long-term agreement with him. Cowboys, I mean, the key for them this offseason is go all defense because their offense was one of the league's best. And they improved the running game. Javonte Williams, they paid him this offseason after a good year by him. Dak Prescott had a big year. They're in a good spot offensively. It's just the defense was, not very good. Did improve a little bit at the trade deadline with the trades they made, but they got to continue to build up that defense because it was a problem. It was definitely a problem for them. Also, Anthony Richardson requested a trade. It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up because all signs point to the Colts, bringing back Daniel Jones. And then they also got Riley Leonard, who played a little bit towards the end of the season. After Phillip Rivers, that experiment didn't work. More so because, Rivers played well, but, it just wasn't enough. But in the game that Riley Leonard did play in against the Texans, looked decent. So, he's going to back up Daniel Jones. They bring him back, and then they're looking to lock up Alec Pierce on a long-term extension after a breakout year for him or a career year for him. So, it'll be interesting to see where Anthony Richardson ends up. Maybe could the Vikings maybe bring him in, and compete with JJ McCarthy. We'll see. But we'll see who takes a chance on him. I feel like there is talent there. There is talent there, but from not being able to do the little things and tapping out in that game against the Texans, he's got to build his stock back up, and we'll see if he could do that on a new team. But yeah, we are approaching the start of the new league year. Free agency is going to be all over the place, and we'll make sure to cover that. In the draft we got coming up and things like that. And obviously we will cover that as well. But the NFL will be making headlines. That's for sure once again. Once the new league year starts. And basketball, we got March Madness coming up. Always exciting. Looking forward to doing a bracket. The NBA season, we really haven't talked about it that much. We've been talking football and baseball. Obviously, with me, being in the New York area, I do like to obviously cover the Knicks, and they had a big win yesterday against the Spurs. They kind of, dare I say, have owned the Spurs this season. I mean, they beat them in the in-season tournament championship for the NBA Cup. And then I think didn't they beat them again earlier this season, even before that? If memory does serve. Either way, I mean, this was a big win yesterday. I mean, it wasn't even close. They won 114-89. Mikal Bridges had a very good game, 25 points. Brunson had 24. All five starters were in the double digits. The Knicks, though, they have really struggled with the Pistons this year, and it was kind of the same deal last year. I think they went 1-3 against the Pistons last year. This year, the Pistons, did even better, swept the season series 4-0. And I know some people are saying, "Hey, it's not a big deal. We'll see what happens in the playoffs." I do think there is some validity to that. I mean, the Pistons, it was a tough series for the Knicks last year. They won in what, 6 games in the opening round last year, and I did go to one of those games. I went to game 2 when they lost. Um, I do think there's some validity to that. The Pistons, they're going to be tough. They're going to be tough, and you also got the Celtics you got to deal with too. The Knicks, sometimes they look flat, and then they win a game like they did yesterday. And you're like, wow, this team that was great. So we'll see what happens come playoff time. They got to get Deuce McBride back, obviously, to help out with the bench. They do miss him. He is a valuable piece to that team, and not having him is tough. But listen, as long as you got the starting 5 healthy, I know Karl Anthony Towns, uh, you know, is obviously a topic of conversation. That he's a frustrating player. But Cat can have a big game, in big moments. But you could also say he also comes up small in big moments. So, look, the Knicks are going to be one of the top teams in the East that's contending for the finals. It's, are they going to be able to, if they match up with the Pistons in the 7-game series, are they going to be able to knock them off again this time around? We'll see. But, yeah, and I'm curious to see if Jason Tatum ends up coming back for the Celtics, because I know he's returned to practice, and Joe Mazzulla has kind of been been giving some very interesting looks and responses to reporters' questions on what the deal is with him. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But I mean, looking at both conferences, the Western Conference is the better of the 2 conferences, which it's been like that most of the time, watching basketball. But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting what happens when we get to the postseason. But yeah, so a lot of stuff coming up. Opening days in a few weeks, like I said, World Baseball Classic is coming up, and we'll touch upon it. Obviously, as it moves along, NFL free agency coming up. So I know there's kind of like that period in between, the Super Bowl and an opening day of baseball, where there's the first couple weeks after the Super Bowl is kind of it's kind of slow, but once you get to March, that's when things start to pick up. So yeah, I think we're gonna end it here. So yeah, we're gonna try to do these live shows. This was kind of like a test. See how it goes. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Again, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video, to the channel. I got the social media platforms not just in the description, but also in the ticker below as well. And as always, everybody, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys next time.